Captain Zaray's fingers hovered over the holographic display, her eyes scanning the data that flooded in from her fleet's ongoing assault on Earth. The tactical readouts flashed in front of her, each one signaling a new human counterattack. Her mind struggled to make sense of it. This was not supposed to happen. The Xylan Empire had sent its best warriors, its finest ships, expecting nothing less than an easy conquest of this primitive world. And yet, Earth humans were defying them in ways Zaray had never seen before. Impossible, she muttered under her breath. Her pulse quickened as another alert blared. A crucial reconnaissance vessel had been disabled by a coordinated strike from a group of human forces. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. "Captain, the enemy is adapting faster than we expected," Lieutenant Aris said, stepping into the command center. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that Zaray hadn't heard before. "Our fleets are taking casualties. Their tactics are evolving." Zaray turned to him, her eyes narrowing. Aris was an experienced soldier, his loyalty unquestioned, but even he seemed unsettled. Zaray had always believed that superiority in technology and firepower would guarantee victory. But now, something was shifting in her understanding of this war. The humans weren't simply pushing back, they were anticipating every move. "Their understanding of our tactics, it's like they've been expecting us," Aris continued. "They know our weaknesses, they know our strengths, it's as if they've been preparing for this for centuries." Zaray clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had seen resistance before, but nothing like this. Every military strategy they used seemed to be anticipated, countered before they could even deploy it fully. This wasn't the fight she had prepared for. "We're being outplayed," Aris added, his voice dropping lower. "Captain, they're smarter than we thought." Zaray's eyes lingered on the data before her. For the first time since this campaign began, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. What were they missing? She had no time for doubts, not with the fate of her empire on the line, but it was hard to ignore the sense that something was fundamentally different about these humans. A sharp ping interrupted her thoughts. A transmission from Earth. A direct message from Commander Max Sinclair, the leader of the human resistance. The screen flickered to life, revealing the image of a man standing in a war-torn command center. His eyes were intense, his expression steely. "You've made a grave mistake," Sinclair's voice cut through the static. "You've underestimated humanity. You should have learned from your history. Now, you'll witness our true strength. We've been preparing for you, for a long time." Zaray's heart skipped a beat. Preparing for us. Her mind reeled. What could this insignificant species have prepared for? They had been nothing more than an afterthought to the Xylan Empire, a backwater planet with no real strategic value. But the confidence in Sinclair's voice, the certainty, troubled her more than she cared to admit. She turned away from the screen, a wave of frustration sweeping over her. The Xylan Empire had never encountered anything like this before. There were rumors, of course, stories from old campaigns, of ancient civilizations that once ruled the stars. But these were just stories, nothing more. Zaray had always dismissed them as myths, the remnants of old, defeated races. And yet, standing here now, in the cold command center of the Archeus, a dark thought began to take root in her mind. What if those stories weren't just myths? What if the humans were part of something older, something that no one had considered? Aris broke her thoughts, his voice hesitant. "Captain, our fleet is losing ground. We need a new strategy." Zaray shook her head, her mind racing through options. What were they missing? She wasn't about to retreat. Not after everything the Xylan Empire had invested in this mission. She had come too far. The humans may be proving to be a tougher adversary than expected, but she couldn't afford to lose to them. She turned to Aris, her voice firm again. "We'll regroup. We can still win this." But inside, a seed of doubt began to grow. Something was happening here, something that transcended this battle. She felt it in her bones, as if the very planet was pushing back against their invasion. Earth wasn't just fighting to survive. Earth was fighting for something more. As she watched the tactical map shift again, a small thought pushed its way forward in her mind. What if this war wasn't about survival at all? The tension aboard the Archeus was palpable. Captain Zaray stood at the front of the command deck, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of Earth's surface. The coordinates of the human strongholds blinked back at her, as if mocking her inability to break them. Why are they holding so well? Zuray's voice was low, almost to herself. Every time she thought she had them cornered, humanity's defenses adapted. Earth's forces seemed to be everywhere, always one step ahead. It was as if they were reading her every move. She had no time for speculation. Time was running out. Beside her, Lieutenant Aris adjusted the settings on the holo display, his face tense. Their strategy is unlike anything we've seen before. We're losing too many ships. Zuray clenched her jaw. She had led the Xylan Empire through countless campaigns, always emerging victorious. The humans were supposed to be an afterthought. And yet, here they were, turning the tide against an empire far superior in technology and firepower. The soft beep of an incoming transmission cut through her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. Another message from Commander Sinclair. She resisted the urge to ignore it. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. The transmission flickered to life, and the same human commander appeared, looking just as resolute as the first time. There was no fear in his eyes, only a chilling calm. "You've been making a mistake since the moment you set foot on this planet, Captain." Sinclair's voice was steady, his words sharp as knives. "You still don't understand the true nature of humanity." Zuray's grip tightened on the edge of the console. "We don't understand." The arrogance in his voice was almost enough to make her snap, but she held herself in check. "What are you trying to say, Commander?" Sinclair's eyes narrowed. "You think this is a fight for survival, don't you? That's where you're wrong. This isn't just about winning a war. This is about something far older. Something your people never bothered to learn. We are the descendants of an empire far more ancient than the Xylan. You've only awakened a sleeping giant." Zuray's breath caught in her throat. An ancient empire. The words echoed in her mind like a distant, forgotten memory. Could it be possible? Had the humans always been more than they appeared? Aris, sensing the shift in Zuray's expression, stepped closer. "Captain, we should proceed with caution. What if this ancient empire is real? What if they..." Zuray cut him off with a sharp motion. "We don't have time for speculation. But this changes things." Her eyes returned to the transmission, and Sinclair's image flickered for a moment before he spoke again. "We'll stop you," he said, his voice colder now. "And when we do, you'll understand. You never stood a chance." The screen went dark, leaving Zuray staring at nothing. Her mind was spinning. For the first time, she began to question the foundation of everything she had believed about humanity. Could the humans truly be descendants of an ancient, interstellar civilization? She had dismissed such ideas before, thinking them mere myth. Now, with Sinclair's words still ringing in her ears, she wasn't so sure. A sudden alarm broke her thoughts. A fleet of human ships had appeared out of nowhere, cutting through their defensive perimeter. The humans were striking with precision, faster than the Xylan had anticipated. "What the hell?" Zuray hissed. She had been so caught up in the conversation that she hadn't noticed the shift in the battle. "Captain, they've deployed a new type of weapon," Aris said, urgency in his voice. "It's disabling our shields, some kind of electromagnetic pulse." Zuray's mind raced. This was new. She had never encountered anything like this before. The humans' tactics had shifted again, adapted, as they always did. She felt a strange, unsettling sense of awe creeping in, despite herself. The battle outside the Archeus intensified, but Zuray's focus was no longer on the fight itself. Her thoughts were consumed with Sinclair's words. An ancient empire. The humans were not just the desperate, primitive species they had assumed them to be. They were something more, something ancient, something that had been waiting. The question now was, what exactly had the humans been preparing for all these centuries? As she watched the human fleet continue to advance, Zuray's fingers hovered over the control panel. Her confidence in victory, once absolute, was faltering. The truth was becoming harder to deny. She wasn't just facing the forces of a primitive species. She was facing something much older, much more dangerous than she had ever anticipated. "Captain, we need a new strategy, and we need it now," Aris urged. Zuray took a deep breath, her mind racing. She was no longer sure what they were dealing with, but one thing was clear: the war she had come to fight was not the war she was in. She was no longer just fighting for conquest. Now, she was fighting for understanding. And that more than anything, terrified her. The hum of the Arceus engines was a constant backdrop to Zeray's thoughts as she stood at the command console, her fingers poised over the holographic map. The humans had proven more than just resilient, they were evolving in ways that defied logic. Each attack, every new tactic they used, seemed to anticipate the next move the Xylan Empire would make. Zeray felt a gnawing sense of unease deep within her. She had once believed that no species could challenge the might of the Xylan. But the humans, this seemingly primitive species, were pushing her forces to the brink. "Captain, we've detected another anomaly," Aris's voice broke through her concentration. She turned to face him, his face drawn tight with concern. "It's another wave, but this one's different. They've started using something else." Zeray raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, a sharp beep filled the air, signaling the incoming human fleet. This time, however, it wasn't just a wave of ships. Their ships seemed to shimmer, almost bend as if they weren't entirely real. "What in the stars is that?" Zeray muttered under her breath, staring at the strange phenomenon unfolding on the screen. Aris adjusted his display. "Their ships, they're disappearing. Vanishing into thin air, then reappearing behind our lines. It's like some kind of cloaking technology." Zeray's pulse quickened. The humans had always been unpredictable, but now they were showing signs of wielding advanced technology that rivaled, no, exceeded, anything the Xylan Empire possessed. It was as though they had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the Xylan to come, to push them to this point. "They've been hiding something from us all along," Zeray said, more to herself than to Aris. The realization was a bitter one. The humans had never been the underdogs. They had been playing a much longer game, one the Xylan Empire had failed to recognize until now. "Captain, the fleet's advancing. We need to counter this new tactic," Aris urged. His voice was strained, but there was something else beneath it, a flicker of fear. Zeray's gaze shifted back to the map. The humans had already begun to exploit their new advantage, flanking the Xylan forces in multiple locations. Ships materialized in places they shouldn't have been, and their firepower was precise, surgical. "Focus all fire on their lead ships," Zeray ordered, her voice sharp. She knew they had no choice but to fight back with everything they had, but the more she observed the human fleet's movements, the more she realized how outmatched the Xylan had become. A communication ping broke through the chaos of the command deck, followed by a familiar face on the hollow screen, Commander Sinclair. His expression was cold, but there was a certain satisfaction in his eyes that sent a chill down Zeray's spine. "You're witnessing the beginning of the end, Captain," Sinclair said, his voice resonating with chilling finality. "We've known this day would come. Your empire is weak, and now, you're in our world." Zeray clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. She knew he was taunting her, but there was no mistaking the power behind his words. The humans had pulled something from their ancient past, something far beyond what she had ever imagined. And now, she was seeing the results. "Your so-called empire has underestimated us for the last time," Sinclair continued. "Your military strategies are nothing more than stale patterns to us. We were the first, before your kind ever stepped foot on this galaxy. Your empire is a blip in the history we've been shaping for millennia." Zeray's mind raced. First, what was he talking about? Were the humans truly ancient? Had they been part of something older, something that existed before even the Xylan Empire? The question lingered, unsettling her as she looked back at the flickering image of Sinclair. "I don't care for your games, Commander," Zeray said, trying to mask the growing uncertainty inside her. "If this is how you want to fight, then we will destroy you." But Sinclair's laugh was chilling. "You still don't get it, do you? You cannot destroy what is already part of the universe's fabric. Your forces are scattered, your leaders are blind, and you, Captain Zeray, are facing the resurgence of an empire that predates your own." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Zeray in a stunned silence. She was no longer hearing the words of an enemy commander, she was hearing something else, something older, deeper, more significant than anything the Xylan Empire had ever faced. "Captain." Aris's voice broke through her reverie, but his words seemed distant, almost muffled. "We're losing ships. We need to retreat." Zeray snapped back to the present, but the weight of Sinclair's words hung heavily in her mind. A resurgence of an ancient empire. What if everything she knew was a lie? What if the humans were part of something so vast, so beyond her comprehension, that the Xylan Empire had no place in it? No, Zuree said firmly, but it was less an order and more a defiance of her own doubts. We won't retreat. We will fight them. But deep inside, a sinking feeling began to settle. What if the humans weren't just defending their world? What if they were awakening something far more powerful than any force in the galaxy? As the battle raged outside, the Arceus, Zuree knew the true war had only just begun. And with each passing moment, the humans seemed to be unraveling the very foundation of everything the Xylan Empire had ever known. The Arceus shook violently as another round of devastating fire ripped through its shields. Captain Zuree stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the flashing red lights signaling the damage. Around her, the sounds of alarms and rushing feet filled the room, but her mind was elsewhere, drifting through the words of Commander Sinclair, the eerie calmness of his voice. Your empire is a blip in the history we've been shaping for millennia. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for something far deeper, something she couldn't yet fully comprehend. And with each new assault, they seemed to get stronger, more organized, more coordinated. Captain, we've lost the port flank. Aris's voice was urgent, as the ship's systems were failing one by one. Their pulse weapons are tearing through our shields faster than we can recharge. At this rate, we'll be completely exposed in less than 10 minutes. Zuree's fists clenched. Her forces were breaking under the relentless pressure of the humans' technology. She'd thought they were prepared for anything, but this was something different. The battlefield was no longer just a clash of ships and weapons. It was a test of survival, of intelligence, of understanding the very fabric of reality itself. And the humans were winning. Are the reinforcements coming? Zuree asked, her voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. Aris hesitated before answering, his voice tinged with reluctance. The reinforcements were diverted to the outer colonies. We're on our own. Damn it. Zuree slammed her fist against the console. The Xylan Empire had once been an unstoppable force. But now, facing the humans, the tide of war was shifting in ways she could never have imagined. She turned sharply to face her tactical officer, Commander Urine. What's the status on their new cloaking technology? Urine looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's not just cloaking, Captain. They're folding space. I can't explain it, but their ships are literally disappearing and reappearing from different locations. It's as if they're bending the very fabric of space itself. Zuree's breath caught in her throat. Bending space. How was that even possible? The humans had access to technology beyond the Xylan's wildest dreams, and they weren't just using it to defend their world. They were reshaping the very way warfare was fought. A sudden shudder rocked the Arceus, and Zuree was thrown off balance. She caught herself on the edge of the command console, but the damage was already done. The ship's outer hull was breached, and they were being pulled into a gravitational field, an unrelenting pull that threatened to crush them. The battle was over. The war was slipping through her fingers. But as the crew scrambled to make emergency repairs and stabilize the ship, Zuree's thoughts returned to Sinclair's words. He had hinted at something bigger than the fight itself, something older than her people. What if it wasn't just about winning the battle? What if the humans had been playing a long game, preparing for this day long before the Xylan had arrived? And then it hit her, the human empire. Sinclair had spoken about it so matter-of-factly, as though Zuree should have already known. Could it be that the humans were part of an ancient civilization that had been dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to awaken? The thought was so unfathomable, so beyond everything the Xylan had ever believed about humanity, that it took Zuree a moment to grasp its full implications. Captain, Aris's voice cut through her reverie. Their flagship is coming into range. They're signaling a transmission. Zuree snapped to attention. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. The moment when the true nature of humanity would be revealed. She nodded sharply, and the transmission from Sinclair flickered onto the screen. This time, his face was devoid of any arrogance, devoid of any emotion, even. It was the face of a man who knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. He knew that victory was inevitable, and there was nothing the Xylan Empire could do to stop it. You're losing, Captain. Sinclair's voice was calm, as though he were explaining a simple fact. But you already know that. What you don't understand is that this war was never about us versus you. It's about something far older. Something that you've awakened. Zeray's pulse quickened. What are you talking about, Sinclair? What is this really about? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced off to the side, as though considering his words carefully. Finally, he spoke again. You've heard the stories of the elder species, haven't you? The ones who left their mark on the stars long before any of us were born. Zeray's breath caught in her throat. The elder species. Tales of an ancient, almost mythological race of beings who were said to have transcended physical existence, leaving behind only whispers in the void of space. For centuries, the Xylan Empire had dismissed these tales as mere legends, unsubstantiated myths. But what if they weren't? What if they were true? You're saying the humans are. Zeray's voice trailed off as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The humans weren't just an ancient race. They were the last remnants of an elder species that had once ruled the galaxy. Sinclair nodded slowly, his eyes locking with hers through the transmission. We are the inheritors of the elders' legacy. We have always been here, waiting for the right time to return. And now, that time has come. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Zeray in stunned silence. For a long moment, she stood there, frozen in place. The realization was staggering. The humans had never been the underdogs. They had never been the weaklings of the galaxy. They were the heirs to a legacy far older than her people's, an ancient power that had been dormant, lying in wait until the stars aligned. And now, with the Xylan Empire at their doorstep, they were ready to reclaim their place as the true rulers of the universe. But how could she fight that? How could the Xylan Empire, with all its might, stand against the power of an ancient civilization that had been preparing for millennia? Captain, Aris's voice was urgent again. The humans are deploying another wave. We need to decide, retreat or fight. Zeray's mind raced, her thoughts spinning. She had always believed that the Xylan Empire was unstoppable. They were a force to be reckoned with, feared by every species in the galaxy. But now, she wasn't so sure. The humans had shown her something she had never expected. They were not just a species trying to survive. They were the descendants of the elders, the true rulers of the galaxy. There was no victory to be had here. Not for the Xylan. Prepare to surrender, Zeray said, her voice heavy with the weight of her decision. We will end this. The war is over. As the command was passed down to her crew, Zeray watched as the human fleet closed in, their ships advancing with methodical precision. For the first time in her life, Zeray felt small. Not because the humans had defeated her, but because she had come to understand that the universe was far bigger, far more complex, than she could have ever imagined. The Xylan Empire was but a footnote in a history that stretched back to the very dawn of time, and humanity was there at the center of it all. With a deep breath, Zeray prepared to face whatever came next. The war was over, but the story of the humans had only just begun.